Wednesday MLB main slate. We just finished our video for the early slate and ready to talk about actually a slate that's got a few more decision points, I guess I would say.
Yeah, I like it.
That's a pretty good one. I kind of like these 8 gamers. Any overall thought sheets before we go game by game on your screen?
No, there's a couple of key games I think that we have to talk about, and I think there's going to be a standout pitcher, which I'm not sure I'm actually going to play. So we'll get there when we get there, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen, and we will get going.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk about the standout pitcher as we get to it. Okay, so let's start off with Boston and Washington, Paxton and Mackenzie Gore. Let me just double check because I haven't looked much into the weather for the evening slate yet.
I don't see anything.
Looks like it's all okay. All right, so Boston and excuse me, I'm just pulling all my stuff up. It's 83 degrees. Mackenzie Gore is 6K. I understand he's struggling. I kind of am interested in taking a shot, to be honest with you. I think Paxton is also probably too cheap. So I'm interested a little bit in both pitchers. And if you're not going to play Mackenzie Gore, I think that you could definitely make an argument for the Red Sox. Again, I'm not usually my favorite thing away from Boston, although they did well last night. But I think that that's totally viable.
I like both these pitchers. I like both Paxton and Gore. I just think 6,000 is too cheap for Gore as well. And there's a chalkier pitcher that's around the similar price tag we'll get to later. So you'll get him at probably low ownership. So I kind of like it. Now, again, Paxton, the usual caveats, taking pitchers against Washington. Okay, fair enough. But 8,200 is cheap enough where I can kind of, make a reason to, I would say ignore the Washington stuff, but it's I definitely think he's in play. With respect to the hitting, I do have Boston as one of the more favorable stacks as well. I don't say as well. I don't know if you really like them, but I say as well as kind of the public because they are looking to be somewhat chalky here. Mm-hmm. Not like not the top, but they're going to get played. They rate pretty well for me as far as just raw points and pretty well as far as value goes. So I definitely think they're in play. So Boston and probably both pitchers.
Yep. Kind of weird that Paxton is like the only guy who didn't get a price jump, and Mackenzie Gore, I guess.
And Mackenzie Gore.
Well, this guy always loves to talk about Pablo.
And Aaron and Kevin Gausman, by the way.
Yeah. And just for what it's worth, Pablo Reyes is not killing anything. He's scored 10, 0, 2, 8, 10, 9, 0. That's all bluff. There's nothing about Pablo Reyes that's killing it. He had one good game a week ago. Let's not get crazy. But yeah, if you want to play him, if you're playing the stack, he's a cheap option that you can use in the stack. If I had to pick, the guys I would use from Boston, I'd probably just go middle of the order, and I'd probably leave out Ref Schneider if I could. But again, I'm not probably going to be stacking either of these teams, at least as of right now. All right, moving on to Philadelphia and Toronto. Pitching wise, you have really good pitchers and both in really tough spots. It worked out well for the pitchers last night. Not like that well. That's what you see. You see these guys pitch 1-run games in 6 and 7 innings, and they still only ended up with around 20 fantasy points. It's just these offenses they make you work. Both pitchers on my list. Neither of them do I have as my top priority, although I would have to lean Gausman if I had to pick one. No hitting.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I have them as rated very similar to one another when you factor in prices and everything else. But I do have Gausman a little bit higher, but you know what? He's being owned a little bit more too. So I think these two are both pretty efficient as far as pricing and ability to be played. I'd probably be with the field at some degree on both of them. And they're certainly both good enough for me to keep me off of both sets of bats.
Yeah. I'm just going to reiterate this one more time, TJ. I really think you're doing it a little bit. I like that you did it last night, what you did last night, what you're saying with the Cardinals and all that stuff. But I just want to say, because you're throwing a lot of thoughts into the thing, guys that have a 300 average. First of all, Freddie Freeman has a 322 average versus everybody. He's a 320 hitter since in the last, 3 years. As a Dodger, he's a 320 hitter. Mookie Betts is just below. So the fact that they have a 300 average off Wade Miley is not going to mean anything to me. Just FYI. And we'll get to the Cubs and we'll get that. We're going to go game by game. But you really don't want to look at so much of this individual stuff. I'm just telling you, it's really a recipe for absolutely nothing but misery in baseball. Like, you want to understand it. You don't want to try to just target these got somebody who has a high average. There was a great example of it back in the day. Miguel Cabrera hit like 450 off somebody, but had like 100 at bats off of him, and he only had 1 home run. And everybody would always talk about what a great play he was because he hit like 450 off the guy. And I'm going, well, Miguel Cabrera cost $6,500. He cost $6,500, and I have a guy who's got 100 plate appearances and he hasn't hit a home run off of. He's hit 1 home run off of. That's not good enough for me. So you just got to be careful when you just try and look at things from an individual player perspective, especially from hitters. All right, moving on. Sorry, Sheets. Atlanta, New York. Look, it's the same thing as always. Atlanta, yes. The problem is the ownership. I actually think we'll get there today enough, but or more than projected. But it's still going to be low enough where I think you could play it. And Atlanta was one of the top stacks, and I have Morton as probably a better play than the field does. So I actually like Morton quite a bit, and I like the Brave stack.
Yeah, I'm more with the field on Morton, meaning a little bit light. I don't really have too much interest in him. It's Groundhog Day, right? Atlanta's rates to be the top raw points on the stack, on the slate. And it's a question of whether you get to him. Now, I will say that there are a couple of teams that are close enough to them where, like you said, I think they are going to be lower owned today than they usually are. And I think that you can play guys like Mackenzie Gore and other guys to be able to play these guys with relative impunity, actually. Listen, you have to give up, some high upside, expensive pitchers to do it. But, Atlanta, you see, they put up freaking double-digit runs sometimes, and when that happens, you just want to have it, and they put them up in the ways that we want. We put them up in terms of home runs. So I would definitely put them on a very short list of high upside teams.
Yep, and that's what I've got as well. I do want to just point out that Morton, for what it's worth, he has a 38% strikeout rate against the 130 at bats against this Yankee team. That's not a crazy amount, but that's 5. Let's say he started 5 times against a team that season and he was striking out that many guys. You'd probably have some interest. So I just want to throw just backing my Morton love up a little bit. I'm just double checking the weather there in Atlanta just to see what kind of just another great hitting day, 83 degrees, little wind blowing out. All right, Cheats. Start us off here with what I think is going to be the most chalky situation.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know which one you have first. You got of course, it's the Angels, Texas. I was going the next one. All right, why don't you start off the Angels, Texas then?
Well, I think that's true as well for this game. I mean, I think that John Gray is going to be very popular in this game. At least he's rating for me to be the top SP2-ish. You know what I mean? Like the top cheapo on the board. He certainly doesn't rate as high as like some other guys, but as far as an SP2 to save money, he rates really, really strong. And I do have him projected at like 20% plus ownership. So I actually do think that he's I know what you were getting at. We'll get to that game in a second. But I don't think you're wrong about this game as well. I think that John Gray does rate to be a good play. And as I mentioned, if you want to get up to teams like Atlanta, these are the guys that you're going to have to play. As far as the stacks go, I'm not. Well, I mean, Texas always rates okay, So I think Texas remains in play as somebody you can play pretty much every day. I like playing the righties against Detmers. So I definitely think that I would take a shot at that. So Texas and John Gray.
Yeah, I get it. John Gray. This is really weird with the pricing. I feel like everybody went backwards on this slate, and everybody's been up for the last 2 slates. They just kept raising everyone's pricing. For what it's worth, I don't think Texas gets like a crazy amount of ownership. I think they'll have some. I think that they'll be a little bit below Atlanta. And it's a good enough spot. So I'm totally good with Texas. I have them as one of my teams. And then I have John Gray as an option, but nothing particularly like it. You know, it's just one of those things. We talk about these other guys as chalk on slates. John Gray, until like 2 games ago, was basically just, I don't think, like, he was just getting roughed up every start after that great start against St. Louis where he had the complete game. Or he just hasn't been the same. And then he looked really good his last couple times out in really good matchups, and this is another good matchup. So he's definitely high on my list. I get why he's projecting well. I think he's going to be really popular. That's okay though. I mean, he's definitely a guy I want to use. Just wanted to play devil's advocate for a minute and say that there might be some risk, some more variance there. And yeah, anyway, I like Texas. I like John Gray. Now we get into this really, really, really weird situation here. So can I start out? I'll start off this one real quick.
Yeah,
The Battle of Chicago.
Yeah.
So you have 78 miles an hour, 78 degrees with 12-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to left field. I like, you know, Clevenger, we obviously know is not the same guy he used to be. But I will say this, like, I don't like find a start of his that you would want to take bats against him for a team that I think ends up as the absolute clear far and away chalk. Am I wrong about that? I'm wrong. Wow. Well, okay, flip it then. If that's really factually true, if we really think it's I think that it's going to be interesting when sites update their things, because there's no way everybody on Chicago is going to be sub 10% owned with the highest run total on the slate. So I do think Chicago ends up really popular. The White Sox. I'm sorry, the Cubs. I think both these offenses are in really good spots, and I think both pitchers are just pick. They're definitely guys you can pick on enough. Although Assad's coming off a really good game. So I'm okay with taking with both these offenses. I'm higher on the Cubs, but I'm assuming the field will be as well. But I really like this game to be a kind of a shootout-y game. So I have both sides of this as being a big priority for me.
Yeah, I have both of these teams sort of equal. I like the White Sox just as much as the Cubs, and I have them both rated, top 5. I mean, I don't have them standing out as, the top play, honestly. I don't have either of them that much better than Boston, if you want to know the truth. And we'll get to another one later. But yeah, I mean, they both look to be really, really strong. And like you said, I mean, Clevenger is, he's been around the block. You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't go so far as say he has one of those, like, he has tricks guys. He's actually better than that, I think, at this point. So, listen, if the Cubs end up being like uber popular, then you just play the White Sox, I guess. It's the same game. But they both rate to be really, really strong, and these win games are kind of tough to fade sometimes if it really gets moving. So I do like both sides of that.
Yeah. Like, interesting, like, I was thinking about this game, if this would be the automatic thing I would be doing if we had Coors on the slate. You know what I mean? Like the same Coors slate, I would much rather play this game than I would the Coors game.
Yep.
All right. Seattle and Kansas City. I'm a little confused at why everyone – I understand, like, I feel like there's too much recency bias maybe. But it's weird because he actually has been really good. I'm kind of confused at why Luis Castillo is not looking like a clear, far and away the best pitching option on the slate. I have Castillo right now, right basically at the top. We'll talk about the other guys in a minute, but I don't know why we wouldn't take a shot with Castillo here against KC. We know KC likes to chase. It is good hitting weather, but KC, even with that, KC with a 3.6 run total, I think that's, I'm interested in Castillo. And as is the theme of this slate, I like a lot of stacks. I like Seattle as well. They're going to be popular. They're cheaper. It's maybe as an ownership thing, you can decide to fade them, but I think they're a really good option.
Seattle, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Seattle I have is rated like number 2, sort of, like right below Atlanta and above Chicago, Boston, and the White Sox. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be pretty freaking popular. I think that's what I actually have them as the highest owned stack on the board right now. So we'll see if that actually happens. But that's what I have. Kansas City against Seattle. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that Castillo is literally no different than the non-Snells. You know what I mean? I think he's just the same, for me at least, as the Nolas and the who are the other guys we even mentioned? The
Nola, Gaussman.
Paxtons, Gausmans. I think all these guys are just no better than Castillo. But I also don't. I have Castillo at 20% ownership projected right now. So
yeah, I would. But every other slate we've seen him like this has been 50 or 60 or 70.
Well, the thing is, you're gonna have Snell with like 40. That's gonna be the only problem.
Right, but why though? Like,
we'll talk about that, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the other thing: is that not only that, but we've been streaming pitchers and righties against Kansas City like all year, and so it's not the greatest park for hitting either. So just the fact that they put up these runs the last couple of, so much of this is like late game heroics against bullpens anyway. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I'm if you're really, I don't want to do that. But yeah, I agree with that. I think Castillo is just as good of a play as any of these other guys.
Yep. All right. Well, we can jump over to that Baltimore San Diego game now, because I do think this is interesting to me. One thing that I do want to point out is that I've actually been much more on the Snell train this year, even with the variance and everything, especially because he started off being completely low owned all the time. I'm trying to figure out what the exact reason is why he stands out so much above everybody else, or what that would be. It doesn't make sense to me entirely. I don't see him as being twice as owned as Castillo as being a viable option, a viable play. I just think that makes no sense to me. I also happen to like Kremer as a pitcher on the other side. I'm not going to play him, but I have no interest in the bats at all in this game. I'm not doing we keep getting these questions because we got more people in now, which is great. But sometimes I'm like, oh no, I know what they're doing. They're just game log watching. They're just seeing the runs that these guys give up, that these guys score, and they're trying. And it's just couldn't be more the wrong way to do the baseball thing, unless there's very certain situations for it to just assume that a team is going to keep scoring 10 runs. Sheets likes to go the other way on those situations. I look, Snell is on the list. He's below Castillo for me, factoring in ownership. For what it's worth, Baltimore is a below average strikeout team against lefties. They're an above average on base team against lefties, and they're an above average hitting team against lefties. Yeah, it's a huge park downgrade. Yeah, they've been dominated so far in this series. I don't see any reason to get too creative and play Baltimore or anything like that. But it's not the worst thing, and I just don't have interest in trying to pick on Kremer, who I'm still on the hey, this guy's pretty good side of things. So I'm probably going to end up fading this game, even though I like Snell just because the ownership, and pretty much fading all aspects of this game.
Yeah. So as I alluded to in the lead into this to the show, there's a guy that kind of looks like a stand that I'm probably not going to play, and this is that player. I agree with you exactly what you just said, in that I'm looking at my projections here, and I don't get it either. And it's one has everything to do with the other, right? Because his projection is so high, that's why his ownership is so high, right? And that makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to say I don't believe it, I don't get it, or whatever it is, but I'll put it another way. All right. We talked about Snell since we've been doing these shows, right? And there's some guys that you want to play as not chalk, and some guys you want to fade as chalk, and this is just one of them. You get, like you said, you get bad Snell, I mean, you're freaking toast, And listen, I'm the biggest dude. Snell made me the 50 piece earlier this year. You know what I mean? So I have no problem playing Snell sometimes. Snell had him that day like 15% on like a 4-game slate.
Right.
Ridiculous, But you give me 40% on a freaking slate with Nola, Castillo, Gaussman, for God's sake. You know what I mean? Like guys that were probably better than him, right? And Baltimore's the freaking nuts. See, why do I want to play a 40% pitcher against this team? I can't imagine why. I mean, I know that, let's say they dominated during the series. Every time I watch Baltimore, they're freaking hitting home runs. They're just killing people. So I don't know. I'm going to let someone else play him. Now, with that said, I mean, if I run this in MLB and I get some of them, okay, that's fine. But I promise you, he's not going to be with anything chalky. Like there's going to be no Snell Seattle or no Snell Cubs in there. You know what I mean? That's not going to happen.
Right.
It's going to be Snell with like Texas somehow or something like that. I don't know.
Right.
But
right.
But yeah, I don't need to do that. And as far as Kremer goes, I sort of agree with your sentiment. The guy's gutsy, man. I kind of like him. I don't like him really today, but he he gets it done. He was kind of got a little unlucky. He could actually was doing better than his line score was. I was watching that game. I had Kremer in that game, his last start, and he was good. He could have been great. But listen, he's not doesn't mow everybody down. And listen, San Diego's a tough spot, but I'm not playing San Diego or anything like that. So for me, San Diego, what you call it? Snell looks like the best play on the board, but I'm just not playing him anymore.
Yep, and I want to point out something. I wonder, Sheets, what percentage of people from play DFS do you think would know who has the second best record in baseball?
Exactly. Well, yeah. You know what? He's we attack like Baltimore and like Minnesota too, right? I mean,
Minnesota doesn't have a great. They're playing a terrible division, just beating bad teams. Baltimore plays the toughest division in baseball, and they still have the second best record in baseball. And I think people but they see these names that we've been picking on for years, like Kremer or whatever, and they just like assume that we can take it against the Baltimore pitcher. This is not the same Baltimore team. Like I'm just saying, both offensively and pitching wise, and bullpen wise too. They're just not the same.
But how long did it take people this year to realize that Cincinnati was freaking good?
Well, Cincinnati, in all fairness, wasn't good. They got good when they brought up all their 5 young guys who teared the cover off the ball.
Right.
And the Andrew Abbott, who became like the greatest pitcher in baseball, like for a little while. All right, so we're gonna talk Dodgers now. This is gonna be a tough one for me. So Sheets, you started off, and I'll.
Yeah, sure. I don't know what is the story. I'm not getting the Kershaw today, and I think in a similar way to why I don't believe the Snell projection. Unless you're going to tell me that Kershaw's still on some pitch limit or something, I don't quite get this one either.
Of course, he's on the pitch limit. Yeah.
What's that on the other side?
Oh, he's absolutely on the pitch limit. There's no question about that.
Oh, okay then. Okay.
Whether it's a limit or whatever. I mean, can he get up to 90 if things were cruising and his arm's feeling great? Maybe.
All right, so it's a tough slate for that then.
Yeah.
As far as the stacking goes here, I'm not getting to Miley. I'm not playing anybody against the Dodgers nowadays. I'm not getting to the Dodgers. So if you want to try to convince me that, go for it. But I am off of them today.
So this is where I'm struggling a little bit. This is exactly the type of pitchers who historically have given the Dodgers trouble, right? Like the softish, creative lefties. Now I say that, and then you look at the numbers, and it actually looks like, oh, these guys have hit him pretty well. Well, these are different Dodgers. And I don't like stacking against Miley in general. It's such a common thing to do. I bet you if you just never did it, you'd probably be better off. He just doesn't get like rocked quite enough. But I'd still have a hard time not having some interest in the Dodgers, especially because, like I said, it's a different Dodger team. You have JD Martinez, who's one of the great lefty hitters, lefty mashers. You have obviously Mookie. Freeman is basically the same against lefties and righties. Doesn't really make a difference. Will Smith is awesome against lefties. Ahmed Rosario is awesome against lefties. Max Muncy, same power, worse average. Kike Hernandez has always been good against lefties. They just have a good lineup, better lineup for this situation than they've had in a while. And they're rolling right now. It's going to be 81 degrees again, second time in a row for the hottest night in LA. Wind's going to be blown out to right center. Didn't work out last night. I have to have the Dodgers on my list, but I'm not. It's not like a crazy prioritization because I'm looking at the teams I like. I like Atlanta, Texas, both sides of the Chicago game, Seattle, and the Dodgers. I think if I had a gun to my head right now, I would be probably the heaviest focused on that Chicago, both sides of Chicago, and both sides, the White Sox and the Cubs would be my 2 favorites, I think, as of right now. Maybe not the Cubs, the White Sox on their own, but I just like that whole. I want to get that game environment. And next, I would pick Atlanta, then Texas, then the Dodgers, and Seattle. But I will force myself in one of my bigger buy-ins to play a Dodger stack, and that's probably the way I'm going to treat it. Probably have 3 big lineups tonight, and Dodgers will be one of them.
I don't know if you're going to be available, but I'm planning on doing an 11 o'clock live stream tonight. It's up to you. I mean, I
there's a chance I could make it for that.
I dedicated myself to sort of DFS. Say we're doing the live stream. I'm going to make myself available for the meeting also.
Beautiful.
And then yeah, because I'm going to be. I think I'm going to be out tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I currently, what I'm doing currently doesn't really matter. But I'm kind of inclined to do something like Mackenzie Gore, and then with John Gray. How about this? Okay, you want to try this? How about we do this? How about we do John Gray, and then how about we do Mackenzie Gore, and then let's see how much these Dodgers cost, just for fun.
Right. And while you're doing that real quick, I'm going to mention to Rich B's point, I completely couldn't disagree with him more. He keeps saying the same things about like before. And I love Rich. He's great. Like, but he was saying before, oh, the Dodgers keep letting down. And I'm like trying to figure out what he's talking about. They have a couple of games where they only score a couple runs. Sure. But like overall, I can just tell you they've scored more runs than everybody in baseball, not named Atlanta. So I don't know what to say over the last month, over the last 2 months, actually. And as far as the pinch hit risk with the Dodgers go, I don't find it frustrating because I know it's an absolute guarantee. And basically, they're not that different than a lot of other teams in baseball. And if you can really afford to play JD Martinez, Mookie Betts, Will Smith, and Freddie Freeman in the lineup together, have at it. That's going to be basically impossible to build out the rest of your lineup, most slates. So I just don't agree with the fact that it's like just giving up on the Dodgers. I just think that's a really bad way to look at it. I think this is still it's the second best offense in baseball, and I would never. Yeah, the pinch hitting that's a part of the game. If every team has some pinch hit risk, the Dodgers happen to have more of it right now, but there are still ways around it. All right.
Are these guys any good for the Dodgers? Smith, Freeman, Betts, Taylor, Martinez.
What's that?
Smith, the Dodgers. Smith, Freeman, Betts, Taylor, Martinez.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so maybe something like this, like 5-man Dodgers with these two cheapos, couple of White Sox, maybe something like that. I don't know. Something. You don't like Benintendi too much. I know
that. No, you just play him in stacks.
That's what we're playing.
Yeah, has he hit a home run yet? I don't think he has.
No,
he might have hit one. Maybe he has by now. It's been a while since I've checked.
Put Suzuki in here, something like this. I don't know. But here's the other thing again. For those of you that are going to go on, just play Seattle or whatever it is. I don't know. These bullpen always annoy me a little bit. And like I said before, I mean, I much prefer playing Seattle against the lefties. That's just me.
Oh, it's not really a bullpen game. Yeah.
So that's, as a matter of fact, I would have made worse plays than playing Alec Marks at 5K off the bench. So
yeah. I mean, it's just and we feel a little bit better about him, right, than we do about like the hey, will Manaea pitch tonight or what's going to happen thing.
Did he end up going last night or no?
Yeah, he did. But the weird part is the other guy, Junis, they both put up good games, but Junis had put up a bigger game, and he was the one who was the opener.
Yeah.
So that's why it's always a thing. Yeah, and yeah. Anyway, so I don't think I said my pitching. My pitching, I'm getting a little bit as of right now. I've got Castillo, Morton, Gore, Gray as my 4, but like honestly, it could easily be Snell, Gaussman by the end of the day, depending on what lineups are released. It's a Wednesday. Sometimes you get different lineups out there with value, but I don't know if I even want to do that. Maybe the one who I should get a little bit more on is James Paxton. As much as we talk about how there's not as many strikeouts in that lineup for Washington, they strike out significantly more, even though it's still not a ton against. Wait, what do I have them at? I'm trying to find this. For some reason, I'm having a little trouble here. There they are. They're like average against lefties in terms of strikeouts, whereas against righties, they are the second hardest team to strike out. So maybe Paxton is a little bit better of a play than I thought. I'll add into my list. But it's an interesting 8-gamer where I don't usually have 6 stacks, and even when we do the big slates, I've got 6 stacks, and I've got 5 pitchers that I like and 4 that I'm considering, which is a lot to have on an 8-game slate. But I will hopefully have it more fine-tuned by 6 Eastern, and I'll post my early builds in Discord.
Yeah, I think if I really had to guess right now, maybe I wouldn't be too brave and do Gray and Gore. Maybe I'd do like Gray and Castillo or something like that.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, we will come back with a golf thing, and then we'll also we'll be live at 6, and then we'll be live at 11 too. We're everywhere.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you guys soon.
Oh, you want to bet?